You remember the first time you laced up gloves that weren't bought from a department store. They smelled like vinyl and other people's sweat, stiff from the hands that had been in them before yours. The gym was a cage in itself. A warehouse with peeling mats taped together, heavy bags that leaned like broken trees, and a coach who barely looked up when you walked in. You were just another kid chasing a highlight you saw on a grainy YouTube clip. Anderson Silva's front kick, GSP's takedowns, Adesanya's dance before war. That's where the hook sank in. They were gods and you thought maybe, just maybe, you could be too. From the start, you didn't fit anywhere clean. Too broad to starve yourself down to welterweight. Too light to hang with the monsters up at light heavyweight. Coaches told you middleweight was the sweet spot. Balance of speed and power, they said. The perfect division. But you learned quick that perfect was just another way of saying purgatory. Too fast to muscle through, too slow to outslick everyone, stuck between two worlds that didn't care whether you existed. Your first amateur fights weren't glory. They were regional shows in high school gyms where the crowd was mostly parents and drunk locals. You walked out to music nobody could hear over the busted speaker system, fists wrapped in medical tape that was already unraveling. The cage rattled like it was ready to collapse. But the moment the door shut, it felt right. Every jab, every scramble, every clinch on chain link fence. For the first time in your life, you weren't invisible. The crowd screamed your name or something close to it, and for a few fleeting minutes you thought this was how destiny starts. But destiny doesn't show up when you call it. After the hand raises and the sweat dries, you're back to working at the gas station, back to ice packs and ramen dinners. You scroll highlight reels of legends and measure yourself against ghosts. You can't help it. You replay Silva slipping punches like he was bored, or Weidman shocking the world, or Bisping finally climbing the mountain with one good eye. You think, that could be me. You ignore the quiet thought that whispers, or maybe it never will. The grind eats you whole. Weight cuts that make your bones feel hollow, morning runs and hoodies soaked through before the sun even rises, sparring partners who treat every round like it's their ticket out too. Your body adjusts before your brain does. The headaches after hard sparring? Normal. The nosebleeds during cardio? Normal. Waking up to piss blood after a cut? Normal. You tell yourself it's sacrifice. But sacrifice only matters if there's something on the other side of it. You start to wonder if there is. And still, you keep coming back. Because in the gym, you can control the chaos. On the mats, you're somebody. You know the feeling of slipping a right hand and countering with a clean left hook that snaps a head back. You know the silence that falls when the heavy bag swings just right after your kick lands. You know what it feels like when another man breaks under your pressure. That's the part that burrows deep, the part you can't let go of. Friends from school stop calling. Family members ask why you're still chasing that cage thing. Girlfriends last a few months before realizing date night means cold chicken and watching fight tape. You don't blame them. This life doesn't make sense to anyone who hasn't lived it. It barely makes sense to you. But when you tape your hands, shadowbox under the fluorescent hum, and feel sweat sting your eyes, you know it's the only place you belong. The first real rush comes at a bigger regional card. The crowd's bigger, the cage is sturdier, the cameras are streaming. You're 3-0, fighting another undefeated guy who swears he's the next big thing. The adrenaline hits like a drug. You don't hear the crowd, you don't feel the kick slamming into your legs. You only feel the rhythm, your breath, his breath, the tiny windows opening and closing in split seconds. You find one. You land the right hand. He drops. The ref waves it off. For the first time, you feel like this might actually work. You might be special. But then you hear it backstage. Middleweight? That's the hardest place to break through. Too many killers at the top, no attention at the bottom. You brush it off. You tell yourself you're different. You repeat it like a mantra, I'm different. But deep down, you already feel it. The glass ceiling hovering just out of reach. And you know even this early that every ounce of blood and sweat will be spent just trying to crack it. You finally get the call. Not the big one, not UFC yet, but close enough. A manager who barely knows your name tells you there's a shot on the Contender Series if you stay ready. You're already half-starved from cutting weight when the news comes, already bruised from another month of sparring with guys chasing the same dream. But it feels like oxygen, a chance to prove you're not just another regional warrior. You fight, you win. The contract slides across the table. For the first time, you're a UFC fighter. You let it sink in for about 10 seconds before the reality slaps you. Now, the real pain begins. Middleweight isn't forgiving. Everybody here looks like they were sculpted out of granite. 6'2", 6'3", torsos like tree trunks, reach like condors. You're good, sure, but good is a death sentence in this division. There are no soft touches. You either fight a ranked monster coming down from light heavyweight, or you fight an unranked prospect hyped as the next Anderson Silva. Either way, the narrative isn't yours. You're the sacrificial lamb or the stepping stone. Win and you barely move up. Lose and you're disposable. Fight week is its own hell. The weight cut never gets easier. You sweat through plastic suits, spit into bottles, lay in saunas until your head spins. You dream of water. Coaches scream about ounces. The mirror reflects a ghost. Ribs poking out, eyes sunk, lips cracked. You tell yourself you're fine, but your organs are screaming for mercy. Then, 24 hours later, you're supposed to rehydrate, smile for cameras, and fight a guy who spent the same week killing himself just to make the number. The Octagon debut doesn't feel like destiny. It feels like survival. The lights blind you. The cage feels bigger than it ever did. Your opponent's punches carry different weight than anyone you fought on the regional scene. He kicks your leg and it feels like your bone splintered. You land shots, but they don't make him blink. You dig deep, bite down, and somehow your hand gets raised. You think relief will wash over you, but it doesn't. Just exhaustion. Just the sinking knowledge that this was only the first of many. Training camps blur together. 8 weeks of living sore, icing joints, limping through drills while coaches demand sharper counters, harder sprawls, faster transitions. The gym feels like a morgue some days. Bodies wrapped in ice packs, tendons taped, everyone pretending they're fine. Your knees ache from constant wrestling defense. Your shoulders click every time you throw a cross. Your jaw buzzes when you wake up because of that one sparring knockout you don't talk about. You start to wonder how much longer your body can keep this pace. The money doesn't help. People think UFC fighter means millionaire. They don't see the contracts. $10,000 to show, $10,000 to win. Then taxes, then gym fees, then management cuts. You fight 3 times a year if you're lucky, and maybe you clear 40 grand. 40 grand for your brain cells, 40 grand for your knees. You bartend on off weeks, teach cardio kickboxing classes, sell tickets to your own fights. You smile for fans after weigh-ins while secretly praying you can cover rent. And then there's the injustice of visibility. Lightweight gets all the buzz. Heavyweight gets all the spectacle. Middleweight? You're invisible unless your name rhymes with Adesanya. You put on wars and no one notices. You break bones for fight of the night bonuses that don't even cover a surgery bill. You scroll Twitter after a bloody 3-round win and see people debating bantamweights instead. You bleed, sweat, and sacrifice in silence. Every matchup feels like a trap. You beat an unranked guy? No one cares. You lose to him? You're exposed. You beat a ranked veteran? He was washed anyway. You lose to him? You're not ready for prime time. No momentum, no clean path forward, just years of trench warfare for scraps of recognition. By the time you hit your first ranking, you're already carrying injuries that won't heal. You walk with a limp. You tape your wrists until circulation cuts off. You sleep with ice packs like a second blanket. The grind doesn't love you back. And the worst part is, you know it never will. But you still keep showing up because you don't know how to stop. You break into the rankings, top 15, then top 10. On paper, it should feel like the dream, but in reality, it feels like a waiting room with no door. Middleweight politics eat careers alive. You see it up close. The chosen ones with built-in star power leapfrog everyone else. Adesanya dances his way into superstardom. Chael talked his way into title fights. Anderson once made the whole sport bend around him. Meanwhile, you're just there. Skilled, dangerous, marketable only if somebody decides you are. But no one does. Every fight becomes a paradox. You get booked against an aging legend, a guy you grew up watching. If you win, the narrative is that he's past his prime, washed, should have retired years ago. If you lose, you're a fraud who never belonged. Or you get matched with a hyped rookie, the UFC's next big thing. Beat him and fans say he wasn't ready anyway. Lose, and you're the cautionary tale in his highlight reel. Either way, you never climb. You just spin in circles paying dues that never add up. The machine dangles promises. One more win and you're in the conversation. One more big performance and you're right there. You start to realize right there is code for never. Because the company doesn't care how many fights you grind through, how many bodies you leave on the canvas, how many nights you crawl out of bed with your back locked. They care about ticket sales, Twitter buzz, viral knockouts, none of which you provide. You're the wrong type of fighter at the wrong weight class. Invisible, but necessary. A cog that keeps the gears moving. Your body betrays you even as you try to climb higher. The concussions stack. You don't remember a whole round sometimes. Your vision blurs during camp. Your knees swell to the size of grapefruits after wrestling drills. You stop running stairs because your ankles scream. You pop ibuprofen like candy, ice after every session, tape every joint before sparring. You try to joke about it, but deep down, you know your body is cashing checks your career will never pay. The fear creeps in, not of fighting, but of being forgotten. You watch younger middleweights with shinier records and flashier highlights leap over you. You hear Dana praise their potential while you stand in the shadows. You know you could beat some of them, maybe all of them, but it doesn't matter. The game is about optics, not skill. You're the hard fight nobody wants. Too dangerous to pad a record. Not famous enough to headline. Stuck in limbo. You keep grinding anyway. Film sessions. Camps. Another brutal weight cut. Another paycheck that feels like pocket change. You convince yourself the next fight will be the one that changes it all. But then the cage door locks and you know the truth. Nothing changes. Win or lose, you walk out the same fighter. The same overlooked middleweight. The same name fans forget by the next pay-per-view. And still, you can't quit. Because the octagon, for all its cruelty, is the only place you feel whole. When the ref says fight and the crowd roars, the noise in your head goes quiet. The pain in your joints fades. The pressure disappears. For 15 minutes, you're not a paycheck, not a placeholder, not a name buried in the rankings. You're just a fighter, and that's enough to keep you coming back even as everything else tells you to stop. It doesn't happen all at once. It never does. At first, it's just soreness that hangs around longer than it should. The morning stiffness in your knees, the sharp pinch in your hip every time you sprawl, the migraines that don't go away after sparring, nothing you can't tape up, ice down, or grit through. But then one day you realize the tape is holding more of you together than muscle and bone. The decline doesn't knock. It creeps in, lives with you, eats with you, trains with you. The younger guys show up hungry. Fresh lungs, clean chins, zero hesitation. You see yourself in them, or at least the version of yourself you thought you were. Half a step faster, half a beat sharper, reacting before you can even finish the motion. You still have tricks, veteran timing, cage IQ. You adapt because you always have. Angles instead of speed, feints instead of power. But even perfect timing can't stop physics. A punch you would have slipped now grazes your chin. A kick you would have checked now thuds deep into your thigh. You feel it instantly. And worse, so do they. The whispers start. Analysts call you experienced. Fans call you gatekeeper. They don't say you're declining outright, not yet. They just say you never evolved. As if evolution was ever possible in a division where matchmaking exists to serve the brand, not the fighter. You still grind through camps, still sacrifice, but the air around you changes. The UFC stops marketing your fights. You stop appearing in highlight reels. You become filler, an obstacle, a name to keep the division moving. The money shrinks with the spotlight. You're still risking the same brain cells, but the checks are smaller. Maybe you're not ranked anymore. Maybe the contract they hand you has a take it or leave it tone. You've bled for this company, left body parts on their canvas, and now they remind you that you were never more than replaceable labor. You've seen it happen to others. Now it's your turn. Training camp becomes rehab. Instead of adding new tools, you're just trying to make it to fight night in one piece. Ice baths, cortisone shots, stem cell rumors you can't afford. You sleep with heating pads, wake up with numb fingers, stretch through spasms in your lower back that make tying your shoes feel like a fight. You start questioning why you're still here. Not because you're afraid of fighting. Because you're afraid of who you'll be when you can't fight. And the fights themselves, they change. The crowd that once roared now scrolls their phones while you walk out. Your name barely registers in the arena. You used to imagine belts, headlines, legacy. Now you just hope the paycheck clears. Hope the opponent doesn't break your orbital. Hope you can still chew dinner the next day. Your family begs you to stop. Friends from the old days tell you it's time, but they don't understand. Fighting is all you are. Without it, you're nothing. One night you're in the locker room, hands wrapped, waiting for the walk. You can hear the crowd, but it sounds far away. You look around and realize you've been here for over a decade. Countless hours, endless pain, hundreds of rounds. For what? A career that leaves no statue, no belt, no generational memory. Just scar tissue, half-healed joints, and a name that slips further down the card every year. You take a deep breath, shake your legs loose, and tell yourself one more fight. Always one more fight. Because you don't know what else there is. When you look back, it all blurs together. The road trips in busted vans to small shows. The regional titles that felt like world championships at the time. The moment you first heard Bruce Buffer butcher your name under the lights. You think it should add up to something more, but it doesn't. Middleweight was always purgatory. The welterweights got all the glory fights. The heavyweights got all the hype. You were stuck in the middle. Too big to be fast, too small to be a monster, too invisible to be a star. You remember the legends because they were exceptions. Anderson made it art. Izzy made it spectacle. The rest? Forgotten. Names washed out with barely a mention. Men who spent a decade breaking bones for purses smaller than a regional banker's yearly bonus. And now you're one of them. You scroll through fight announcements and don't see your name anymore. The division keeps moving. Younger, louder, flashier, you're yesterday's news. The fight world forgets fast, the cage took more than it gave. Knees that won't bend in the morning, wrists that can't grip a coffee mug, nights where you stare at the ceiling because sleep won't come, haunted by echoes of punches you absorbed years ago. Concussions don't fade, they pile up. You've lost chunks of memory. Sometimes you forget birthdays, sometimes you forget conversations. That's the hidden toll, the pieces of yourself the crowd never sees. And yet, part of you still misses it. The walk, the crowd, the cage door slamming shut. For 15 minutes, everything made sense. Life was simple in there. You had a problem in front of you, and the only way out was through. That purpose, that clarity, nothing else in the world ever touched it. No desk job, no retirement plan, no family barbecue will ever feel like that. You see younger fighters now, wide-eyed, fresh-faced, ready to take this same road. You don't tell them the truth. You don't tell them about the nights you cried into an ice pack, the mornings you pissed blood, the months you spent broke after surgeries. You just nod, pat them on the shoulder and say, keep working, because deep down, you know they wouldn't listen even if you warned them. You wouldn't have listened either. Legacy? It's not belts or statues. It's fingerprints, the sparring partners who carry your tricks, the gyms where your sweat still stains the mats. The fans who remember one crazy knockout you landed 5 years ago, it's invisible, intangible, but it's there. And maybe that's enough. Maybe it has to be. The truth is, the sport never loved you. It used you, chewed you up, and spit you out. And you let it, willingly. Because for a while, under the lights, with the world watching, you felt alive in a way nothing else could touch. That fleeting feeling is the only drug you ever chased, the only high that mattered. And when it's over, when the last fight slips into memory, you're left with silence. No belt, no $1 million payday, just a body falling apart and a name fading into trivia. That's why it sucks to be a middleweight in the UFC.